One of the homeboy securities, you said, got him right before me and Mr. Wright got in the vehicle to go get to the hospital.
Michael Moore, the night that Tupac was shot, after being taken off of Tupac with me, went back over to Club 662.
Then someone else came on the radio and said, hey, don't say nothing over the radio.
I'm the sour person, putting down people, but I don't want to do that. I just want you to know what my son told me, what I find to be true, because I've seen some of the dealings that people have done. And it's possible. Let's just say it's possible.
Shockwaves are exploding across the hip-hop world after Tupac's dad allegedly exposed what many believe could be the real killer. New claims connected to Billy Garland are reopening painful questions about the murder of Tupac Shakur, and the emotional reaction is intense. If these statements point closer to the truth, the story of Tupac Shakur may be far darker and far more shocking than anyone ever imagined.
On how he felt about Tupac after Tupac fired him. He basically said, that nigga. You know, and so Mr. Garland then chimed in based on the post that was posted in Tupac's fan group on Facebook, and his words were, and I want you to understand, I think he's talking about in regards to when we got him.
The words coming from Billy Garland didn't just reopen the case, they shook people who thought they already understood what happened to Tupac Shakur. For years, the story of the murder of Tupac Shakur has felt unfinished, like key pieces were always missing. But when Garland allegedly reacted to information connected to that night, many fans felt something shift. Because when a father suggests that certain facts were known long ago but never fully exposed, it hits differently. It stops feeling like a mystery and starts feeling like something was hidden on purpose. One detail continues to send chills through anyone who has followed this case closely. The alleged radio message that said, "We got him." Those 3 words are simple, but the implications are terrifying. According to claims discussed by witnesses, the phrase was reportedly heard shortly after the shooting near individuals connected to the security structure surrounding Tupac. Investigators and fans have debated this detail for decades because of what it could mean. If true, it raises a painful question. Was someone already expecting the attack? That question becomes even heavier when people begin looking at what was happening behind the scenes in the months leading up to that night. The relationship between Tupac and Reggie Wright Jr. has been discussed repeatedly in interviews, documentaries, and insider conversations. Some accounts claim Tupac had already decided to remove Wright from his position earlier in 1996. Reports suggest there may have been a verbal firing months before official paperwork later confirmed a separation. Whether every detail is accurate or not, what matters is the tension that reportedly existed inside the inner circle.
He said, I think this should be a conclusive indictment of his death. Facts that have been known for years can't hide dirt forever. Reggie Wright was heard saying on the radio, and Reggie, let me be clear, Reggie Wright wasn't heard saying on there, it was heard over Reggie's radio.
At Death Row Records, loyalty wasn't just about contracts, it was personal, emotional, and often complicated. Power struggles didn't just stay in the boardroom, they affected friendships, alliances, and protection. Being responsible for the safety of one of the biggest artists in the world was a serious position. Losing that role could create resentment, embarrassment, or even anger. Some insiders have suggested that conflicts inside the camp were becoming harder to ignore as 1996 progressed. Then came the trip to Las Vegas. September 7th, 1996, started like many high-profile nights for Tupac. Energy, attention, and tension all mixed together. But the environment surrounding him may not have been as secure as people believed. Certain claims suggest that decisions were made that affected who would be present for protection, and more importantly, what level of protection would be allowed.
And maybe that's what changed. Who knows why people do what they do? I just know in all my years, it still hurts. You know what I'm saying, when people do stupid shit.
One of the most debated points revolves around whether some bodyguards were discouraged from carrying firearms that night. According to discussions tied to witness statements, there were unusual instructions regarding security readiness. In high-risk situations, protection teams typically prepare for worst-case scenarios. but reports suggest the environment that evening may not have reflected the level of caution expected when protecting a global superstar already facing public threats.
We got him. But the fact that it was heard over his radio is the most disturbing part, as Michael Moore basically had said that's what he heard when he was standing next to Reggie outside of Club 662.
The significance of Club 662 also continues to come up in conversations about that night. The club was closely connected to Tupac's circle, and several individuals involved in the timeline were reportedly present there before and after the shooting. Witness recollections and interviews have placed certain key figures in proximity to each other around the time events unfolded. For investigators and fans trying to piece together the timeline, those connections have always raised difficult questions. Another layer of complexity comes from accounts linked to bodyguard Frank Alexander, who spoke publicly before his death about concerns regarding Tupac's safety. His statements added fuel to ongoing debates about whether security decisions made that night created vulnerability. While different people remember events differently, the pattern of conflicting explanations has kept suspicion alive.
I was the only one in the house that looked different, and they used to make fun of me because I didn't look like them. I was like, phew. See, in talking to you, Del Rey, I don't want to indict other people's, but I still got to tell you what he told me. I can't make this shit up, so I'm telling you what he told me.
Supporters of the theory that something went wrong internally often point to the combination of tension, timing, and unusual security circumstances. They argue that the situation surrounding Tupac that night did not look like the typical protection structure expected for someone of his status. When pieces of the story don't align, people naturally start asking why. What makes this even more emotional is the idea that Tupac himself may have sensed pressure building around him. In interviews before his death, he often spoke about betrayal, loyalty, and the feeling that danger could come from unexpected places. Those words sound even more haunting when revisited today.
It broke my heart. It broke my heart. It really did. I could not understand. You and I know that's our son. You and I know that I'm the father of that boy. And for you to insult me. But I think that's one of her lawyers. But then again, she's fighting for millions of dollars. And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize the significance of that. I'm not looking at the money. I'm just looking to tell the world that I'm Tupac Shakur's father. You're looking on some other shit. You're looking at this, the legality and shit. I'm not even looking at that. All I thought I had to prove that I was his father.
The reason Billy Garland's alleged response has resonated so strongly is because it suggests the possibility that some truths have been sitting quietly in the background for years. A father doesn't speak lightly about the loss of his son, especially when questions still surround the circumstances. When someone that close to Tupac hints that key facts were already known by certain people, it adds emotional weight to an already painful story. Nearly 3 decades later, the case continues to generate debate because the timeline still feels incomplete. Every conflicting statement, every resurfaced interview, and every new interpretation adds another layer to a mystery that refuses to disappear. People don't just want answers because Tupac was famous. They want answers because the story feels unfinished. And when the people closest to him appear to suggest that something deeper may have happened behind the scenes, it forces everyone to look again at details they thought they understood. Sometimes the most shocking part of a story isn't what happened in public. It's what may have been happening quietly in the background the entire time. That radio message, yeah, the one people keep whispering about, we got him. 3 tiny words, but somehow they carry the weight of 1,000 questions. Over the years, this phrase has become one of the eeriest details connected to the night Tupac Shakur was shot in Las Vegas. Because when investigators, journalists, and fans hear something that sounds less like panic and more like confirmation, people start raising eyebrows real fast.
I ain't killed nobody, never did ever kill nobody. They don't have no evidence against me. Came and put me in Las Vegas.
According to accounts discussed by witnesses, that message was allegedly heard through a radio connected to people in the security circle. Now, think about how strange that sounds. Usually when something unexpected happens, the first reaction is confusion. People asking what just happened, people scrambling, people trying to figure things out. But the phrase "we got him" doesn't exactly sound confused, does it? It sounds final, almost like someone already knew what the outcome was supposed to be. And that's exactly why this detail refuses to go away. Decades later, people are still debating whether that message was misunderstood, misheard, or something much more serious. Because historically, short-coded phrases have often been part of organized operations. No long speeches, no dramatic monologues, just quick signals that everyone involved already understands. That's what makes this so unsettling. It doesn't sound like something shouted in panic. It sounds like something spoken with purpose. Now here's where things get even more complicated. Some discussions suggest that the alleged radio message was heard near individuals connected to security leadership, including references involving Reggie Wright Jr. That connection alone has fueled endless debate, because if communication like that really did happen, then suddenly the timeline doesn't just look tragic, it starts looking suspicious. And the radio mystery isn't the only thing that has people scratching their heads. Questions about security that night have been floating around for years, especially involving what protection was actually in place. According to various accounts, Suge Knight had allegedly requested additional security support that never showed up. Now that's not exactly a small detail. When one of the most famous rappers in the world is moving through a high-profile environment, security usually increases, not decreases.
However it hits you, bad or good, it's just say it. It's the truth.
Absolutely.
Just say it.
Absolutely.
Well, you gotta hide shit.
And hopefully you can, the person, whoever's listening and feels some way about it, they can forgive you like you forgave them.
Bodyguard Frank Alexander also spoke publicly about concerns regarding the situation surrounding Tupac's protection. His statements added another layer to an already confusing picture. Some reports even claim certain individuals were asked not to carry weapons that night. And let's be honest, telling security not to carry protection in a situation already considered risky is like telling a firefighter to leave the water hose at home. Technically possible, but extremely questionable. The confusion around chain of command has only made things worse. When multiple people believe someone else is responsible for security decisions, gaps can appear. And in high-risk environments, even small gaps can become dangerous. Some believe the situation that night reflected miscommunication, while others argue it raises the possibility of negligence. Either way, the result was the same. Tupac was left more vulnerable than expected, and then came the aftermath, which, according to several discussions, raised just as many questions as the shooting itself. After Tupac was taken to the hospital, some accounts claim individuals not officially assigned as security reportedly helped monitor the situation. That detail alone has puzzled observers for years. In cases involving global celebrities, hospitals usually coordinate closely with official protection teams to ensure tight security and controlled access. But reports suggest the environment following the shooting may not have followed the standard high-profile playbook. Confusion, emotional reactions, and uncertainty reportedly created an atmosphere where information traveled fast, and not always accurately. Rumors began spreading almost immediately, and once rumors start moving, it becomes incredibly difficult to separate fact from speculation. This is why the hospital period continues to be discussed by those analyzing the timeline. People want to understand why certain protocols may not have been followed and whether the unusual circumstances contributed to the long-lasting mystery surrounding Tupac's final days. Then there's the emotional side of all this, the part that hits hardest for many fans. The reaction attributed to Billy Garland carries a different kind of weight, because when a father speaks about losing his son, especially in a situation surrounded by unanswered questions, people listen more closely. Family perspectives often reveal emotional truths that official reports don't always capture. Some believe Garland's reaction reflects frustration that certain facts may have been circulating quietly for years without being fully addressed. Others see it as the natural response of a parent trying to make sense of a loss that never felt fully explained. Either way, his words have brought renewed attention to details many people had almost forgotten. What makes this story so powerful is that it's not just about crime theories or investigative debates. It's about the feeling that something about that night never quite added up. When multiple people remember events differently, when timelines don't align perfectly, and when key questions remain unanswered for decades, curiosity doesn't just disappear. Even after nearly 30 years, the story still sparks intense discussion because it touches on deeper fears about trust, loyalty, and betrayal. The idea that danger could come from unexpected places is something people instinctively react to. And when the people closest to Tupac appear to suggest that more may have been known behind the scenes, it adds emotional intensity that keeps the conversation alive.
For nearly 30 years ago became one of the nation's most notorious unsolved murders.
Hey Keith, Metro Police, come over here.
Then in 2023, a breakthrough when prosecutors charged this man with ordering the hit, the only person arrested for Shakur's murder, who now tells ABC News authorities have the wrong man.
The mystery continues not just because of what happened, but because of what might have happened quietly, just out of view. And sometimes the smallest details, like 3 simple words over a radio, end up becoming the loudest clues of all. Of course, whenever the conversation turns to what really happened the night Tupac Shakur was shot, one name always enters the chat sooner or later: Dwayne Davis. And let's be honest, the Keith D angle is the one most people have heard. Authorities have long focused on the theory that Tupac's death was connected to gang retaliation, specifically tied to tensions building in the hours before the shooting in Las Vegas. The logic behind that theory sounds straightforward on paper. There was a public altercation earlier that evening. Emotions were running high. People were upset. In situations like that, retaliation can happen quickly. Investigators tend to gravitate toward explanations that connect visible conflict to violent outcomes. It feels neat, it feels structured, and it gives the public something concrete to hold on to. But here's where things start getting messy, because while the external retaliation theory explains part of the story, it doesn't necessarily explain everything that has continued to bother fans for decades. Some observers have pointed out that both things could exist at the same time: external enemies and internal tension. That's where the story starts feeling less like a straight line and more like a tangled web. When different motives overlap, responsibility becomes harder to define. Was Tupac targeted because of street conflicts? Was he vulnerable because of internal disagreements? Or was it a combination of circumstances colliding at the worst possible moment? That's why the debate never really settles. People aren't just arguing about one suspect, they're questioning the entire environment surrounding Tupac in 1996. And this is exactly why the case remains one of the most talked about mysteries in music history. Normally, when something happens nearly 30 years ago, public interest fades. But this story refuses to fade. Every few years, new interviews surface, new claims appear, and suddenly the conversation is trending all over again. Tupac's case doesn't behave like a closed chapter. It behaves like an unfinished book with missing pages. One major reason for that is the pattern of contradictions that keep showing up. Over time, different individuals connected to the timeline have described events differently. Small details change. Timelines shift slightly. Some people recall conversations differently than others. Now, memory is imperfect, especially after decades. But when multiple versions of the same moment exist, people start paying attention. Public statements have not always matched witness accounts. Some recollections seem to conflict with earlier interviews. Certain claims appear years later that were never mentioned before. Each difference might seem small by itself, but together they create a sense that the full picture hasn't been completely clear. In the 1990s, the rap industry itself was undergoing significant changes. Power was shifting, money was growing, and competition was becoming more aggressive. Record labels were not just music companies, they were empires. And empires don't always run on peace and harmony. They run on ambition, influence, and sometimes fear. Within that environment, loyalty could become complicated. Alliances could change quickly. Trust could become fragile. When careers, reputations, and millions of dollars are involved, disagreements don't always stay small. Some people believe this climate added pressure that made conflicts more intense than outsiders realized. Over time, Tupac's death stopped being just a case file and became part of his mythology. The unanswered questions added a layer of intrigue that continues to surround his legacy. Some artists are remembered for their success. Tupac is remembered for his message and for the mystery that followed him even after his passing.